Hey, it's Oilers Live on the drive home. My name is Michael, also known as Oilers Live, and eventually we're going to get Dash on here. He's having some PC issues, and we're going to take you guys home tonight. Our live show is on EdmontonSportsTalk.com. It's special thanks to Dustin Nielsen, Matt Iwanek, Tom Gazzola, and Lieutenant Eric, and the rest of the crew at Edmonton Sports Talk, the best of the Edmonton sports scene. You can listen to Heavy Hockey live here every Wednesday at 5 p.m. And a couple of housekeeping items before we start. There is a live chat that occurs on our YouTube or on Twitter if you want at Heavy Hockey Net. And you can join in on the conversation with us and our guest. Today, we've got a special guest, and eventually Dash will join us. But we've got Joey Cirillo. Am I saying that right?
You are saying that correct.
Perfect. All right. We got Joey Cirillo from the Kraken Pod, and they're part of the Hockey Pod Network, Hockey Podcast Network. So you can go just to at the Kraken Pod on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it. Welcome to the show, Joey. How you doing?
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you for having me. This is great. Yeah,
it's good to have you. I haven't had a Kraken guest in quite some time. And, both teams are kind of in that area fighting for a wild card spot. Both teams a little bit hot, although the Kraken have had lost 2 in a row now.
Yes.
But we'll talk about, that and other things. How are you feeling this year about the Kraken so far?
Oh, that's a loaded question. How much time do we have? I've gone, I born and raised Washingtonian, so I've been a Seattle diehard sports fan my entire life. I try to be as objective as possible, but it's hard, I mean, you have some built-in homerism, obviously. So I don't know. I try to keep it real, when it comes to everything Seattle Kraken. And so far this season, I actually had an episode of the podcast that we did where I had a panic button episode. And I hit that panic button at the very end of November because I was like, you know what? I've seen enough. About a quarter of the way through the season, this team has shown me exactly who they are. There's 0% chance they're making the playoffs. There are so many issues. I don't even know where to begin. And then, of course, as soon as, right when we hit the right into the new year, they roll off, 9 wins straight, a point in 13 consecutive games, etc. So we're in a weird position now. Like you just mentioned, they've lost 2 in a row. They're kind of cooling off, but I don't know. We'll see. I tell everybody, I'm like, you know what? Even if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be wrong when I said the Kraken will not make the playoffs. So that's kind of where my stance has been on the entire season so far.
Yeah. So, it's not unlike what we talked about on here. It was nearing about mid-November, and the Oilers looked like they were on a downward spiral, maybe fighting for last place and a lottery pick with San Jose. In fact, they lost to San Jose, which was when the decision was made to remove Woodcroft, which didn't happen until the game after.
I remember specifically that taking place and thinking, wow, yeah, they're at their low point. And it's funny because I remember looking at Edmonton, and it was kind of mirroring what was happening in Seattle.
Yeah.
For different reasons, but same kind of results on the ice, right? And I'm looking at it, I'm like, all right, so when is Haxtell going down? I'm like, Edmonton doesn't mess around. They're going to get rid of the coach in 2 seconds. Like, what are we doing over here? But we don't operate like that.
So, Joey, were you a hockey fan before the Kraken came around?
Yes, but very, very, very casual. So
yeah.
I spent a lot of, a handful of years living in Colorado. So I have loosely rooted for the Avalanche, but I've never really had a team to really call my own because, again, I'm a Seattle diehard everything. And so the Seattle Kraken launching the organization was an excuse for me to be like, okay, I finally have a team that is my team. I can dedicate my time into really getting to know and understand the sport. So full-time hockey fandom. I mean, in typical kind of me fashion, I went from like 0 to 100 real quick. And decided to also, launch a podcast, haven't missed a single game, doing extensive coverage. And it's kind of just been like a trial by fire. So full-time hockey fandom has been honestly 3 years at this point. So I feel like I have the the knowledge of like a Canadian toddler. I mean, it's pretty low. So kudos to the Oiler fans out there, because I'm still a noob in the game, but I'm learning as quickly as possible, and it's been a hell of an experience so far with the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah. I remember when Vegas came to the league, and I had the fellow from Sin Bin Vegas on the show, and he was a new fan. He got heavily into the stats side of it. He was a baseball fan, of course, before, but it was great. It's kind of neat to watch somebody grow up as a new fan in the league, and make their own decisions in terms of what's good and what's bad out there. And of course, Seattle's given you, they gave you a pretty exciting season last year, I thought. So we couldn't expect, I know as fans, you probably expected the same result that Vegas had, but I think the teams were a little bit smarter when Seattle came up to the expansion draft. Maybe not. We'll see.
Yeah, no, I can't speak on behalf of every Kraken fan, obviously, but for myself, there's a couple of times I've talked about it publicly and on the podcast as well, where I just said, this is not a situation like the Golden Knights expansion. I spent a lot of time researching that and how the league made adjustments, and how basically after the Golden Knights took the league to the cleaners, how the league basically made sure that was never going to happen again. So Seattle had to make some adjustments. Where our plan is definitely the long haul. So I'm completely okay with it. Last year was a very unexpected ride, going to the second round and then ultimately losing to Dallas. But as far as expectations go for this season, I did expect the team to be on that same level. So starting off the way that we did was kind of brutal.
Yeah. I think most Oilers fans got a bit of a soft spot for Seattle, just given the fact that Eberle and Larson are on there. Old Oilers favorites. Do you have a favorite player?
That's hard. And this is going to sound like such a pick right now because the guy's hot. But it's Joey Decord. And I've been beating the drum on him for 2 years now. And I kind of started off as a joke because obviously I'm also a Joey. So I started this whole thing where I was like pro Joey podcast, right? Like I support any Joeys in the organization. Let's go. And so that started about 2 years ago, and was really tracking. What's up?
We're like that with Ryan's.
Yeah, so there you go. So, all right, so Pro Joey podcast, you're like that with Ryan's. And so I don't know. I kind of just hitched my wagon to this guy, and then watching him in the AHL for Coachella Valley, just absolutely on a tear. And then, everything has just kind of fallen into place for him this season. Grubauer goes down. Now he's on LTIR, and Decord steps up and just happens to get hot. He gets to start in the Winter Classic. He gets the shutout against Vegas. Like all of these things kind of start to culminate at the same time. And I'm like, holy crap, this the pro Joey stuff is really working out well. So love Joey Decord. He's a top guy. And Turbo Brandon Tanev. It's impossible not to root for him. If you're on another team and I had to play him often, I would hate him. It's like a Yanni Gord. Like you love to have Yanni on your team, but when you're playing against him, you're like, oh my God, someone please fight that guy. But no, those are just some, a lot of personality there. And I also like the guys that kind of go in like a Tasmanian devil and just shake stuff up a little bit. So that's kind of where I'm at.
No, it's, that's awesome. And Tanev, yeah, if you're playing, those are the kind of players you love, right? The ones that everybody else hates.
Oh, absolutely.
And you definitely want them on your team rather than playing against them. And he's a character. It's been quite the year for Seattle, just like it has been for the Oilers. When you look at tomorrow's game, obviously the Oilers are coming up on Dash. What is it? 63 since 1963. There hasn't been a 12-game win streak. Is that the last one?
By a Canadian-based team.
Sorry. That's right.
The record is the 92-93 Penguins, which had 17.
17.
Ooh, that's a lot of wins.
Unreal. Yeah.
And then the Philadelphia Flyers had 35 without getting beat, but there was tie games back then.
That's insane.
That's a half a season. We're going to beat the snot out of you while we do it.
Yeah, 3 calendar months go by, and it's like, when's the last time we don't ask?
How are you feeling about tomorrow night's game? I mean, the Kraken have played two. I'll be honest about it. I haven't watched them. They've lost two, but they were pretty hot there for a little bit. I watched a couple of those games. They were looking really good. Seemed to have it together, and Decord was, on top of his game, which always makes a big difference. Now the last two, and going into this Oilers game against the hot Oilers team, how you feeling?
Nervous, honestly. I do feel like the Kraken are very capable of playing spoiler tomorrow night, but I feel a lot less confident than I did a couple of days ago. It was a point of contention. I really liked the way the road trip was going. I don't know if this is a hot take. I like the way that Seattle, my most impressive win for me was when they beat Columbus, because although Columbus is a reeling team, it's a long road trip. They've been away from home for a week. The boys clearly didn't have it at all that night, and they found out a way, to win. And there's a pivotal moment in the game. There was a hit on Beniers, which ends up, now he's on IR, but he gets hit by Sillinger. Immediately, Vince Dunn comes, drops the gloves, a couple of uppercuts, and the Kraken go on a power play. And then the former Blue Jacket, Oliver Bjorkstrand, he ends up scoring. The game flips, and then the Kraken end up winning 7-4. And I'm like, okay. At this point, I think that was the 9th game in a row. Next game is Pittsburgh. Not a lot of travel time in between. The boys get a day off. And for whatever reason, I was like, okay, this is when you rest Joey Decord and you let Driegs get the start in net. And so Joey can, moving forward. And long story short, that did not happen. I was not a fan of the way Haxtell was managing the goalies. Come to find out, we had a handful of players that were surprise injured for the game against Pittsburgh. So I honestly, not that it didn't matter who was in net, but I think the result would have been the same. So then I'm really like, why is Joey Decord, who we've been riding for 2 weeks, not getting the start? And so now we're just at a point where, Pittsburgh, we get blanked. New York Rangers, we were not competitive really whatsoever. And I really don't know how to feel. It's going to be very telling tomorrow night when the injury report comes out, because I mean, Matty Beniers, I don't think he's playing at all. It's an undisclosed injury. Yeah. But I think Vince Dunn comes back. If Vince Dunn is not back, the Kraken have no chance.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you look at this. Both Pittsburgh's been streaky this year, right? If not, I wouldn't call them consistent. But they've been able to beat just about anybody and lose to just about anybody at the same time. So, and the Rangers, they're, one of the best teams in the league. So, 5-2. Rangers could come out and beat anybody on any given night. But you look at that stretch, it kind of reminds me, that's, it sounds like you're mimicking what we talk about here on, in oil country, because the Oilers were have been finding a way to win. There's a couple of games where they didn't deserve to win. And we, if you'd listened to our first, 15 episodes of the season, Dash and I got into it a couple times over goaltending for the Oilers, right?
He was right.
We weren't getting any goaltending. And now, we're getting a little bit of goaltending. We've actually had a goaltender, come out and I'd say there's been a couple times where, our goalie has stolen the game, at least kept us in long enough that we came back and won the game, which is something, it's a rarity in oil country in the past 10 years. And it's
last night.
Been everything. Yeah. Last night he was fantastic against, the league's best goal scorer in Austin Matthews. And I look at this, Seattle, just the way they're playing. And, I think they're a formidable team. They're, it's not like Pittsburgh and New York are easy teams to take out. Right.
Yeah.
And so, to lose two to Pittsburgh and lose one to Pittsburgh, lose one to New York. That's not terrible. Question, I guess. Yeah. Is this, are these injuries? Now, tell me what you think. When I look at this Seattle team, the one thing that it's the way its makeup is considerably different from the Oilers team. Like there's no guys on here that are going to light up the league, right? Like
Yeah.
your leading scorer is Bjorkstrand, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't think he's even at a point a game. I mean, the depth across this lineup is pretty solid.
Yeah, that's I think it was actually recently that Haxtell came out and was publicly talking about having 4 second lines. And this was a game, oh man, I want to say it was against the Caps, where they actually moved Jared McCann down to play center on the 4th line for that game. I could be wrong on the game, but I know that move did happen a couple games ago. And it was great because McCann, who I have nicknamed Father Canner, he, right now he leads the Kraken. I mean, he's been hot. He's got 3 goals in the past 3 games. He's got 17 on the year, which leads the Kraken. Again, not anyone that's going to light up the league or anything like that, but just solid all around. You have a guy that's got now 17 goals, 4th line center. You can't really beat that. And, I mean, I guess technically you can because they've lost 2 in a row. But yeah, but overall, no, I really do. I mean, it's the depth thing, and it goes back to last season, which is why I really like this team because they talked about a lot like the NHL and TNT broadcast, especially obviously during the playoffs against Colorado, then against Dallas. This team comes wave after wave after wave after wave. You're not really going to get any breaks, and they fight for everything. They can be gritty. There's a lot of forechecking there. And I really like the 3rd and the 4th line for me have been a lot of fun to watch. I mean, even the game against the Rangers, where the Kraken again lost 5-2, but having guys like Ty Cartier and Kyler Yamamoto on the 4th line are absolutely fantastic. Now, if we can get Burakovsky back, which I've also nicknamed Bubble Boy Burakovsky, love him to death, but that guy's on the IR. I can't count how many times in this season. All I want is just start to get religious and say a prayer and just pray to God he can last an entire game. But no, I mean, if he comes back, he's going to be probably on the 3rd or 4th line. And to have a guy with his ability, that late, I mean, it's just, I don't know. Like you said, it's a team that there's a lot of depth there. There's not a single player, right? You obviously don't have like David or a Draisaitl or anything like that. But you have 4 lines that are going to come at you, and every single one has a lot of depth. And then you have the emergence, defensively from guys like Will Borgen, who are fantastic, and Vince Dunn, who's having a great year. He's actually tied with Bjorkstrand for points as far as the team goes. So, not only is he our top defenseman, him and Adam Larson, but he's also, providing an offensive spark as well. So these guys are all crucial, and all kind of, comes together and forms the team. But it's hard when out of nowhere, I'm looking at the injury report prior to puck drop against Pittsburgh, and there's 3 guys on there I had no idea that were injured. It's like, okay, well, this is not this can go south very quickly. But it's a long season, and these things happen. So it is what it is at the same time.
Yeah. So who are we looking at out for tomorrow night that you think might be out? I know Dunn is day to day right now.
Yeah, he's day to day. I'd be surprised if Dunn's out because they said it was an illness, I believe. That's what was leaked out there. I had a fun conspiracy theory that him and Adam Larson went out and did some boozing after the Columbus game because of the
New York flu.
Yeah, exactly. I had a fun because the game against Pittsburgh after the first period, Adam Larson left the game and didn't come back. And I was like, were these guys out last night? Like, what's going on here? So yeah, I was just floating that around. It's not substantiated whatsoever. I'd be surprised if Vince Dunn's out. I did not expect Matty Beniers to be playing, and that's a pretty big loss. Burakovsky, I have no idea. Even if he does play, there's games where he comes out and plays a shift or 2 or a period and then just disappears again. So I don't really know. So out of the couple guys there, I think Fitz Dunn will be back. And if he is, the game will be a lot more competitive, which, will be good.
Yeah. Where does he normally slot with Larson? Is that who he plays with?
Yeah, with Larson. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And
pretty good stories about Vince Dunn shooting the puck. When I was a season ticket, I am still a season ticket holder. When Sheldon Surrey was here, I'll never forget an exhibition game where he teed up a one-timer and missed the net, broke the glass, shattered it. They had to stop the game for 7 minutes or whatever it was to replace the glass. Everybody finally gives them a round of applause for the crew. Everybody gets off the ice. They clean up all the glass. They drop the puck. back to whoever it was, I can't remember, over to Surrey for another one-timer, shatters another pane of glass. And we're all out for another 10 or 15 minutes because they couldn't find another replacement pane. So like Surrey cost us 45 minutes of our night that we'll never get back. But I understand Vince Dunn was not allowed to shoot the puck in junior when there was like 16 or 17-year-olds on the ice because he would hurt them all the time.
I did not know that. I need to look into it. I mean, the guy still loves his one-timers. I'll tell you that much. I mean, for a defenseman, he's definitely putting pucks on net. So he's not afraid of doing that. I know I like the 35 points he has. I think like 17 of those are assists, which also leads to Kraken, which is interesting. But no, he's not afraid to shoot the puck. But I did not know about the was not allowed to shoot with the 17-year-old because people are out there getting hurt. I'll have to look into that. I mean, I love the guy. He I don't know. He plays. He's a heart on his sleeve kind of a player. Like you definitely know what he's feeling. He's not afraid. A lot of times I'm watching a game and on the broadcast, you can hear him screaming at somebody. So it's not, and he's quick to defend his teammates and stuff like that. So it's a lot of fun when he's on the ice, and hopefully he's back for tomorrow, but I'll have to look into that. That's a great story.
Yeah. I mean, the defense, when I look at the defense of Seattle, I mean, these are some big guys, right? Like Larson's a tough customer. And
yes.
Alexiak's not
and
no small guy either, right? Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty good decor you have. I mean, look, if we didn't have Draisaitl and McDavid and Nuge, in fact, if we weren't probably the luckiest draft lottery team in the history of, and of course Draisaitl, was
fell on our lap.
Yeah, fell on our lap, pure fortune. This is the kind of way I'd love to have a team play. In fact, back in the early to mid 90s, the Oilers were really they're fun to watch now, but they were a fun team to watch back then, but they didn't do anything. Like they'd win, a series here and there, but they were fast. They played hard, like Ethan Moreau and those guys, like, they were fun to watch, and they were just a solid team from top to bottom. Like there were no real superstars back then. I guess Hemmer probably,
Jason Chimera, Brad Winchester.
Yeah,
big
guys
stars.
like this is a kind of team that I love to watch. Now, because we're an Oilers podcast, Oilers live stream. Like tell us about because you've had now Kyler Yamamoto, local boy. What are your thoughts on him this year? Because he's a guy that there's a love-hate relationship in Edmonton. When he came, I don't know what you know about the history, but when he came up from the AHL, he was on a line with Nugent Hopkins and Draisaitl, which was probably one of the at the time it was the best line in hockey. Like they were just unstoppable, and in fact, it saved the Oilers' season because McDavid was out for a little stretch, and it was really the emergence, I think, of Draisaitl as well. But Yamamoto was a big part of that. But then he's ever since that time, I mean, he's struggled to kind of get a good foothold, and yet, watching him go into the offensive zone and fish the puck out, a little guy like that, it was fun to watch. I'd love to know though your thoughts on him.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask you, and I don't know too much of the history, so I'd love to hear the love and especially like the hate part behind it. Before the season started, we were doing a season preview for the podcast, and we were just doing like, silly predictions. Who do we think is going to be a fan favorite amongst the Seattle Kraken? And I actually picked Yams. And the reason why I did is because I was just like, he's a hometown kid, and I know Washingtonians very well. I am one. We're going to gravitate towards people that are from the state. We're going to lift them up. And you also like kind of an underdog story. I mean, like, playing pond hockey in Spokane, Washington isn't still that common. I mean, he's not the biggest guy in the room to say it nicely. But he really earned a spot on the roster. And I remember early in the season watching him play, even when the Kraken were really bad, just seeing like his tenacity and the way that he plays and just how fast he skates. And he's really not afraid of anybody out there, which is really impressive. There was a story that came out recently about apparently his dad is an absolute gem. His dad flew out and was there for the Winter Classic. and the whole team went out afterwards. And there's a story about his dad being drunk with like the Chicklets guys and like just him being a blast. And like, oh my God, like Yams is great. His dad is great. Like these are just great guys. So I've heard nothing but amazing things about him. The fan base has really gravitated towards him. He's been a blast to watch. And again, even on nights where the Kraken kind of don't seem like they're having it together, or the boys are kind of slow, or something's going on, it's not that way with him. In fact, I've lauded him a number of times because I'm like, man, I wish every night the team would bring the energy that he brings, because if so, we'd have a handful more wins at this point. So that's kind of where the fan base is on him. I mean, he's definitely a fan favorite right now for the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Dash has got a Yamo story. Let's hear it.
I just like that. My favorite thing about Yamo was always his play and his tenacity. But my second favorite thing about Yamo was the fact that during the combine and before the draft, they were at a dinner with Chiarelli. And you talk about Yamo and his dad. They were at the dinner there with our current GM at the time, Pete Chiarelli. And apparently it was quoted that Yamo basically told Chiarelli, "You better draft me or I'm going to haunt you." And Chiarelli quoted it in an interview after and said, "That's where I made up my mind and said I'm drafting Kyler Yamamoto."
Yeah, I mean, you have to, right? That's the kind of guy you want on your team. I like it.
Yeah, right on. He had a hell of a point scoring streak in Spokane, right? When that year when he didn't make the Oilers and he went back. It was outstanding. It was fun to watch, like junior. Mm-hmm. He was a fun player to watch.
Our friend Reed Wilkins reported that quote, by the way, Michael.
Oh, nice. Reed's a local radio guy in Edmonton. That's awesome. Hey, Joey, it's a pleasure to have you. Hopefully we can get you back the next time Oilers in Seattle play. We'll talk a little bit more. Maybe have you for a little bit longer. We've got one guest waiting in the wings, and we got a big game tomorrow. The Oilers, of course, going for 12, and Seattle Kraken looking to get out of the mini slump that they're in with 2. Any last words, I guess, about tomorrow's games?
I'm nervous, but no, I'm just excited for it. I think the Kraken, obviously, I mean, I'm sure the boys are looking forward to getting home at this point. This is the last game for the road trip for them. They've been away from home for over a week, but I think they come back a little bit healthier. And I honestly, at this point, I just want a good game, and I think we're going to get a really good game tomorrow night, and I'm very, very excited for that. So I'm excited to watch, the speed and the skill of Edmonton on display. I think Decord's going to get start in net, so I'm excited because he's going to be challenged. So I'm excited to see how those things all play out tomorrow. It's going to be really fun.
Yeah, I think it'll be a great game. Thanks for joining us. When we get back, we're going to have Bruce McCurdy from the Cult of Hockey. We'll see you shortly. Thank you. Devin, Bruce, and the rest of the fantasy hockey hacks right here on Edmonton Sports Talk, Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Mountain, or tune in at youtube.ca/heavyhockey and make sure you like and subscribe. Looking for a hockey fix? We've got editorials, fantasy hockey, monthly brackets, and more. Go to heavyhockey.com. Hey, it's Oilers Live Tuesdays, a regular 9 p.m. Mountain Time, now streamed live on EdmontonSportsTalk.com, or tune in at youtube.ca/heavyhockey. Make ssure you subscribe. Oilers Live Podcast. Want hockey podcasts? Tough Call Podcast, 99 Forever Podcast, fantasy hockey hacks, and replays of Oilers Live. Available anywhere you get podcasts. Just search for Heavy Hockey Network or go to heavyhockey.com. That's right. We need your help. We need your subscriptions. Make sure you subscribe at www.youtube.ca/heavyhockey. Hey, it's Oilers Live for the drive home. We've got Dash fixing his microphone. Bruce seems to have disappeared into the ether. I'm here all by myself for the second half hour until these guys get it straight. It was good to have Joey from the Kraken Pod on. And I'm looking at the Kraken and I'm thinking, man, like this is, Oilers West right now with Yamamoto, Larson, Eberle, and it's kind of and all kind of the kind of guys that were love-hate players with the Oilers, but I think that's every player that has ever donned the Oilers jersey, with maybe the exception of McDavid. Although on occasion, I think even some fans were upset with McDavid on occasion. How you doing, Bruce?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Yeah, doing all right. Feeling good. It's hard not to feel good. Yeah. Hard not to feel good with 11 straight. I got to ask you, Bruce, while we got, and Dash, are you back on? You got the microphone working? Good. Did you imagine at any stretch that we were going to have, I mean, did you think about this at all? There was a lot of people out there who thought the Oilers could turn it around, but this is not turning around. This is smashing it. Like 19-3 since November 24th, 19-6 since Knobloch got behind the bench. I was thinking today, I wanted to look back and quote some of the quotes back then. I haven't heard a Fire Holland thing in quite a while. So, I mean, did you see any of this happening? Did you think this was possible?
Yeah, I did. I said it on some podcast. I can't find it. I don't think it's documented in a post or anything. But I said more than once to various people, when the Oilers were in the throes of dismal, all it's going to take is one 10-game winning streak. And they'll be right back in the mix. It would just get them in the mix. I mean, they were 5-12-1 on November 23rd. You talk about the record since the 24th. Well, up to then, they were in 30th out of 32 NHL teams. They were over 100 percentage points out of 28th. Like, they were way back. But it was early. There's lots of games left. And this is a team that's established itself as a 650 team the last 2 years. And there was no reason. I mean, all they had to do was go 650 the rest of the way, and they were probably going to be in solid shape. I didn't necessarily anticipate they were going to go 850 or whatever 19-3 is. But, one big streak, and it turns out they actually had two, because, of course, they won 8 in a row, and a little losing streak, and then come right back hard with 11. And, demonstrably, I would say the better team on most of those nights, and maybe a little lucky to win every single one of those games for sure, because there was a few tight ones.
Yeah, I mean those are games that the Oilers weren't winning before, right? Like I love it. Like I love the fact that the Oilers have won some games that they didn't deserve to win. Although I should roll that back, because they did deserve to win. They did everything that they had to at the times they had to do it, including last night against Toronto. Like, you come out, you let a goal in 30 seconds in. The Oilers of the start of the season might have let that demolish them for the rest of the game. But they kept going. In fact, it seemed to spur Connor McDavid on, right? Like I love when he gets mad. He just seems to have that extra level.
He was indomitable last night. And he, the score sheet says he only got 1 point, but he was leading the charge in a number of ways. And when he had 5 shots, 5 hits, 70% in the face-off circle, there was a lot to Connor's game last night, and he's so hard on the puck in the offensive zone. It's so hard to get the puck out of the defensive zone when he's on the prowl, because he's faster than everybody and stronger than almost everybody. And he's got the best coordination of anybody. So his ability to strip and steal pucks, or at least get some body part in the way so it stays in the zone. So his equally indomitable line mate, Zach Hyman, can be all over it instead. No, they spend a lot of time in the good end of the ice.
Yeah, that Oilers forecheck last night was something else. Like, I think, I can't remember if it was Jack or Louie, and I know Dash, you were at the game, so you might not have heard them. But anytime the Leafs would turn back with the puck, they'd say, they'd say on the broadcast, "Well, that's not really great. That's not a great idea," because the Oilers were on them. Like, it was, the Leafs would turn back. One time, Gio turned back, and I think Louis said, "I don't know why he's turning back," but then the Oilers, got the puck back, and that's one of the best forechecking games they've had of the season, I thought, last night.
You know what it looked like live really was honestly, I almost want to call it a perfect game. And I know it's not a perfect game in the sense of the word, but just the atmosphere, the way that it started, the way that they turned it around, the way that it was all handled, the way that McDavid kept dragging them back into the fight like Jerome McGinley or Mark Messier. He really reminded me of Iggy last night. I think the best thing that could have happened to the Edmonton Oilers was Austin Matthews slapping us in the face 27 seconds into the game because Connor was embarrassed. And you could see it. Like, he was not a happy camper on the bench. And they come out, what was he, dash 2, Bruce?
Yep.
After a shift and a half. And then he ends up the game +1. You know what I mean? Like, he took that team on his back, and I liked it too. It was like a boxing match or an MMA fight where they came out, they got punched in the mouth, they tasted their own blood, and they went, okay, and we're going to pace. And every line had their own style and played their own style. And there was not a panic. That bench did not have an ounce of panic on it. And I don't know, like, Woody's not a wound up dude, but Knobloch sure as hell is calm. And, we've all been on hockey benches and hockey teams where if the coach or the captain's chirping and talking at the refs and complaining and yelling, the rest of the team feels obligated too. That it was like business on that bench. And you could see they were just taking their time. I'm just Floyd Mayweather. I'm just waiting for my shot. I don't need to get too panicky. I don't need to go and try to make something out of nothing. I'm just going to keep picking my spots and eventually it'll come, and that third line would roll out there with McLeod on it. And it would be like jab, 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 right? And then all of a sudden Dry comes out with that big lug of line. Like, God, they're huge. And intimidating. Like, Draisaitl's an assassin with that stick. Kane's not a nice person. And Fogle drives a pickup truck. Like, these guys are absolutely animals out there. And so there's the right hook and the right hook. And my God, every time that first line comes out, you said it, Michael. You're right. That forecheck was unbelievable. They were spinning around like they didn't know what the hell hit them. It was like Hyman, Nuge, McDavid, Hyman, Nuge, McDavid. There was like they had no chance to even try and recover a puck before one of those guys was on them and making a 9 out of 10 skilled play. It was
disallowed goal of the year last night.
Right?
Like,
yeah, that was weird. I was curious what the announcer said about that, but yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it was
playing Chicago was pretty nice too.
And just to finish that boxing analogy, right? They waited until the final round. They found their perfect spot. Bang, knockout punch. Good night.
It's what's crazy about all of this, and I keep thinking about this, is how many times last year did we, as Oilers fans, have to listen to, somebody from somewhere say, power play merchants or, whatever. I mean, there were 2 penalties called all game last night. Yeah. This was not some power play fiasco where the Oilers were, a guaranteed power play goal or anything like that. Like, in fact, their power play hasn't really been clicking of late. And they haven't needed it.
It's been the weak link. The penalty kill has been way more integral to the winning process. And the power play chips in here and there. They got 2 power play goals in the 3-1 win over Ottawa, for example. But a lot of nights it's the penalty kill going 4 or 5 for 5. and keeping the puck out of the net. That's been the key. And you want to talk about indomitable and coming, picking up the pace and bringing it in the last round. Well, over the 11-game winning streak, here's the scores by period: 10-8 for the Oilers in the first period, 11-5 in the second period, 20-6 in the third period, 2-0 in overtime, and 1-0 in the shootout. So they've been crushing other teams. I mean, forget the shootout. They've been crushing the other teams 22-6 from the end of the second Zamboni to the end of the game. And several of those games, they came from behind in the third period. So it's 3 different games that were behind 1-0 in the third period, facing a hot goalie. And they found enough offense to tie and ultimately win those games.
Patience.
Now, Dash put out a tweet today about the Oilers' record in the last 82. What was the record for their last 82, Dash? This is including the poor streak that they had at the beginning of the season.
53, 21, and 8 in their last 82 games. That's a .716 winning percentage and would put them at 114-point regular season. And the rest of my tweet says this team is a wagon and I don't expect it to stop.
So Dash did go on record as a couple of weeks ago as saying the Oilers are going to go undefeated in January. Bruce, thoughts on that? I mean, to be fair, and we were looking at the schedule. We talked about this for about the last 5 minutes of the last show, and it seemed reasonable. But it was winning that 10th game to make the club record, and then for me, it was getting past Toronto, who depends on who you get on whatever given night. But the rest of the schedule, assuming the Oilers can focus and maintain that focus and they don't take anybody too lightly, it's not as big a hot take as you'd think, right? I mean, this is potential. Did we ever find out if a team has done that at all or recently? Obviously the Flyers would have done it back when they did 30, 32 or 35, you said, and
I couldn't find anything in the modern era. I couldn't find anything in the modern era. Bruce is probably a lot better at this stuff than I am because he's an absolute professional. We all know how much work guys like him and Low Tide put into their work before they post it. But I did look. The Boston Bruins last season had an unbelievable, obviously one of the best, not one of the best in history, and the only undefeated month they had was right at the end in April because it was only 2/3 of a month. I don't know. That said, I think they still won 8 or 9 in a row or something like that. And then I think in November they lost 1 game or something like that. So I couldn't find it. Not saying it hasn't been done. Maybe Bruce remembers something, but not in the modern era that I could see.
Well, the Montreal Canadiens of 1967-68, they were in last place at the beginning of the year in the Eastern Conference, 6th place, and they tied their first game of 1968 with Toronto 1-1. Then they won 12 straight. They lost a single game, and then they won 8 straight. So it's somewhat equivalent to what the Oilers have done now with 2 long winning streaks, very close together. In their case, only 1 game apart. And they, that was one team, and they were in the hole. So they needed to really string the wins together. So they were incentivized every game. It wasn't, a game here or there. They had to go on a streak. It wasn't just, well, we'll win one and we can see what happens after that. No, we need to win 2, 3, 4, 5 and keep going. Just keep beating down whoever we're playing against. And I mean, some of them were expansion teams, of course, but most of them weren't. And they, so that's one that springs to mind of, ancient vintage. And then, of course, the St. Louis Blues of 2019 that went from 31st overall, I think, at the New Year, just January 3rd or something. And, obviously they didn't get to first place, but they sure got the big prize at the end.
Yeah. I think that when I look at the rest of the schedule and you think I mean, the worry always is a team goes into these games thinking they're going to win, and they maybe take their foot off the gas. But I think there's three matchups that are important to the Oilers: at Seattle, Calgary, and Nashville. So I don't think they're going to take those lightly. If I had one worry, I think they're okay to play against Chicago. I mean, Chicago is more or less an AHL team, although they gave them a run last game. I guess I shouldn't say too much, but Columbus might be the team that I'd be most worried about in there, because you don't know which Columbus team shows up on any given night. But otherwise, I mean, Dash, your take on a undefeated January isn't that far-fetched.
It's not far off. It might have been far-fetched when I said it. I was a bit of a psychopath and told so, but right, they needed to get by Ottawa first. That's the first hiccup. I thought that, that's a team that could come and punch them in the mouth. Toronto, obviously, depending how they were playing at the time I said it, I believe that Martin Jones had a 0.6 goals against average in the last 4 games previous. So I wasn't sure what goaltender was going to show up last night. When I said it, I didn't think that the Kraken were going to go on a 9-game heater. So tomorrow now ends up becoming potentially one of, if not the toughest matches, I think. We talked about it in the first segment. That team's MO is balance. But that's also our MO right now. And we got a couple of big superstars, if you haven't noticed. What I love about this the most, and Bruce, you alluded to it last night on the Call to Hockey podcast, and you guys have already talked about it a little bit here, but without this power play, and Michael, you said power play merchants, we've been accused of it all the time. We're winning playoff style hockey right now, guys. Like, this translates well, like where the Knights are right now. They're looking at adversity in the nose. I don't think they know what to do.
I just
Michael's
watched
hurt again. And here,
yeah.
I'd rather we gone through what we went through and be where we are than looking at what the Knights are looking at right now.
I just went to 2 Knights games back to back when I was in Vegas last week. Watched them against Boston live and then watched them against Calgary live. I don't know, like, they've lost something. There's something completely off about the team. Eichel was in the game, the first game against Boston. They won that game, which might have been the most boring game I've ever watched live in my life. It was
because the Oilers weren't playing.
Yeah, yeah, maybe that's why. Yeah, it ended up being a 2-1 Knights win.
Oh.
But at the beginning of the season, I didn't think they were going to lose. Like, they looked dominant. And
They won 10 straight, eh?
Yeah, I think so. I think they won
First
10
10
straight, and they looked good. Like, they didn't just win 10 straight like by luck. Like, they looked solid. But they didn't have it the last 2 games. They deserved to lose against Calgary. And I wouldn't say, I mean, Calgary fans probably thought Calgary played a great game, but I didn't. I thought that whole game was sloppy. It was, it was kind of like whoever got the puck last would score. And, it was a fun game to watch because the puck was bouncing all over the place and nobody seemed to, really have it together. But the Vegas Golden Knights are on the downswing, which leads me to a question. I was listening to NHL radio today, and they were talking about the Oilers, which is a hot topic right now. And they were only talking about the Oilers, I think, because they just played the Leafs. But they're talking about the Oilers, and they were talking about where they all thought the Oilers would finish in the standings for the year. And I started to think the consensus was 3rd in the Pacific. I don't think, and I think, one fellow, I think it might have been Hutton, thought 2nd. Where do you guys think the Oilers? Where do you think they're? Obviously the ceiling is, who knows? I mean, we might have given them a ceiling, 20 games ago, but now, I mean, it seems like the sky's the limit for this team. You guys have a thought in terms of where they're going to finish this season?
It's hard to say, man. Like, look where the season brought us so far. Where'd you think they were going to finish when they were 2-9-2? Like,
Well, for a lottery
thought-
pick.
who thought-
That's what I thought. I mean, there were moments where I secretly
Michael
had
was
my-
pouring the gas on the tire fire.
I was starting to research prospects. I mean,
We need a new goalie.
like, who are the up and coming guys? Who are we getting?
Too many variables.
yeah.
Too many variables. I wouldn't have thought that LA was going to do this. I wouldn't have thought that the Knights were going to do this. Man, we're not even at the halfway point.
I'll tell you this.
We aren't. They are.
Yeah, they are. That's right. That's right.
We got
Thanks,
games
Bruce.
in hand on
Attaboy.
everybody.
God, I love your detail,
Right.
Bruce.
Yeah, that's
More
100%
games in hand
true.
on every team in the Pacific, except
Mm,
LA. Only one game in hand on them. But
Yep.
only 1 point behind them.
But we own
I
them.
see second place. I mean, if
Yeah,
you
I'd
look at
say that
percentage,
too.
it's 625, Vegas 613, Edmonton 610, LA, and you got two of them sort of trending down, and one of them on a Saturn V rocket pointed straight up, and second, it seems to be almost Edmonton's by divine right during the Ken Holland era, 4 times.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
and
behind, I
Vegas
think,
is
3
at a
different
severe
places.
disadvantage without Eichel,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah. So
I'm going to go ahead and say Josh Tough Call's agreeing with me there. Like last year when they went on a heater, so did LA and Vegas. The Pacific couldn't lose, and he's right. Remember that 18-2-1 streak we went on at the end of the year, and we
Yep.
couldn't catch them.
couldn't catch Vegans. So
18-2-1, couldn't catch them.
now, I mean, obviously, Canucks were a big surprise this year. Nobody thought they'd do as well as they did. I mean, everybody might have thought we'd see an uptick. I don't think anybody saw this much of an uptick. The one thing, though, that the beginning of the season, I thought, which is now happening, right? I mean, if you take our predictions, there's about 12, 15 games in our season predictions, and we were looking at those predictions and saying, "Oh man, were we ever off?" Right? And now they're starting to adjust to exactly what we were talking about. I was talking about Velarde going to Winnipeg and how big of a deal he was in LA and how big of a surprise I thought that Winnipeg won that trade right from the start. And at the beginning of the season, I thought, man, was I ever wrong on that? But now,
Velarde got hurt, early.
yeah, he got hurt early, and now he's showing exactly what Winnipeg saw in him, and LA is starting to witness the downturn, right? I'm looking at their last 10. They're 1-5-4 in their last 10.
Wow.
Yeah,
Right.
they're mining Bettman points, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Don't get
me
Michael started.
Yeah, don't get me
The
started.
good news is they're mining them one at a time. They're not winning games in overtime plus getting their opponents.
How else can you mine Bettman points other than
No.
one at a time?
Yeah,
Well, you
What
get
kind of
one
super
in-
machine do you have, Bruce?
One in regulation and one in overtime is the truth one. The Bettman point is, in fact, to me, my thinking is the third point that they actually give the winner,
Yeah,
the one that they
That's
create
fair.
out of whole cloth.
that's fair.
Don't get me started on the point system.
I'm with you there, Bruce. You and I could do a whole episode on that. It drives me absolutely nuts. And the fact that the Professional Women's Hockey League got it right off the start, makes it even worse for me. And all I was at when I was at the Knights Flames game, and I couldn't decide who to cheer for. I started a chant in the last 10 minutes, as did some of the other Oilers fans there, because there were actually quite a few Oilers fans in attendance. Win in reg. That was it. You just wanted to make sure that whatever happened, I didn't care who won, but just that they won it in regulation.
Yeah, my
And
policy
that's
for
key, Mike.
watching games like Vancouver against Calgary for all these years has been, I'm rooting for whoever's got the lead.
That's exactly
Keep
it.
the lead, make it a 2-point game.
Like, what a ridiculous thing to cheer for, but
Yeah.
it's the state of our point system for sure.
It is.
Yeah.
And the state of Oilers fandom, let's be honest. Not
Oh.
many arenas where we're that strong when we're not there.
I mean, look at
Oh, Vegas. After all.
Seattle is 19-25, right? I know we just had Joey on and we're talking about the depth of Seattle, but 19-25. And they're sitting at 47 points, 2 points out of a wild card spot.
Yeah.
The Flames are 21-23.
Uh-huh.
Right? And they're 2 points behind Edmonton. Granted, we've got 4 games in hand, but we are 24-16.
Yeah.
Like when you look at it in that light, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like it just, yeah. You said not to get me started. You got me started. I hate it. Like my blood boils every time I look at the standings. And
I'll give you the same answer I give you every time. 2006.
Yeah, no, I know one season, and it doesn't mean that I agree with it.
Not just
Right?
one
Like,
season.
Broke in our
Yeah.
favor in 06.
Yeah.
But it was broken all the same. You know, Toronto this year in regulation, they played 42 games now. Their record in regulation, 13 wins, 13 losses, 16 ties.
Wow.
They promised us this overtime system would eliminate tie games. Well, it's eliminated tie results by the nature of the system. But we got more tie games than ever before because it's in both teams' interest to
Yeah, I say it rewards mediocrity is what it does.
Keep close games close. Right?
Yeah, rewards mediocrity. Like that's all. Yeah.
Anyway.
Anyway, yeah, we got started on it, and there you go. There you have it. One of the things I'm kind of interested in, and I think we can talk about this before we go on a quick break. I'm looking at the stats. Do you think Connor McDavid cares about finishing Art Ross winner this year?
Unless it's close or something's dangling or what have you.
Like he's 14, a good 14 points behind. Kucherov is having a hell of a season.
He is.
I think it's all about the chalice this year.
Yeah. I mean, that's the great thing about watching this Oilers team over the last 11 games is Connor McDavid's not having 4-point games, right? Like every time. The Oilers aren't winning by the power play. Connor McDavid's not getting 4 points, right? Like he's still getting points. Let's not, and he's still the best player, the most advanced player on the ice night after night after night. Last night he played, not only did he play Connor McDavid, but he played I hate to compare him to this guy, but he played a Kachuk style game with how he was in the face of Toronto all night.
Iggy.
Right? Iggy. Yeah, maybe a better style. Like, and he was he's chirping at Riley after McLeod scores the goal. He's chirping. Like McDavid did absolutely everything last night. When we get back, I want to talk about Ryan McLeod.
Sure. Sound
good? All right, guys. This is Michael for Oilers Live. Proud to be a friend of Edmonton Sports Talk. We'll be right back. Join Devin, Bruce, and the rest of the fantasy hockey hacks right here on Edmonton Sports Talk, Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Mountain, or tune in at youtube.ca/heavyhockey, and make sure you like and subscribe. Looking for a hockey fix? We've got editorials, fantasy hockey, monthly brackets, and more. Go to heavyhockey.com. Hey, it's Oilers Live Tuesdays, a regular 9 p.m. Mountain Time, now streamed live on edmontonsportstalk.com, or tune in at youtube.ca/heavyhockey. Make sure you subscribe. Oilers Live Podcast. Want hockey podcasts? Tough Call Podcast, 99 Forever Podcast, fantasy hockey hacks, and replays of Oilers Live. Available anywhere you get podcasts. Just search for Heavy Hockey Network or go to heavyhockey.com. That's right. We need your help. We need your subscriptions. Make sure you subscribe at www.youtube.ca/heavyhockey. Oilers Live Podcast. Hey, it's Oilers Live with your drive home. We are on edmontonsportstalk.com. You can find us on TuneIn, over here at youtube.ca/heavy hockey, on Facebook at facebook.com/Oilers podcast, twitch.com/Oilers Live, and last but not least at on X at Heavy Hockey Net. I've got Dash, my co-host, and Bruce McCurdy from Cult of Hockey on today. We're going to talk a little bit more Oilers for the last half hour and start with, I think, Ryan McLeod, who has had a stretch that has been pretty damn good, one that has put him back onto the third line because he's capable now of playing there, and one in which he was an all-star last night in a game that included Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Draisaitl, McDavid, Bouchard, and the guy that got first star, none other than Ryan McLeod. How do you guys feel about him? I mean, Dash, you and I got in a bit of a bout about Ryan McLeod not that long ago. Same time we were talking about goaltending. Both goaltending and McLeod have turned it around. Thoughts?
Yeah, he has, absolutely. I think obviously the move to the wing was something that Knobloch saw necessary, and tough to disagree with him at this point. Like his speed is up there with maybe top 10 guys in the league. You could see it in that last shift last night. They just didn't know how to handle those two guys when McDavid and McLeod were both out there at the same time. But Bruce will probably correct me because he's much smarter than both of us combined. But I believe that Ryan McLeod has 3 game-winning goals in this 11 game stretch, and that's saying a lot. That's saying a lot. Bruce, you said last night, how many games did he go before he even scored?
Well, he went 21 games without a goal. At the start of the year, he was no goals, 4 assists after 21 games, and he was -6 at that point. And since then, he's played 18 games, 8 goals, 6 assists, and plus 15.
And clapping game winners.
3 game winners. He scored 3 goals in the first minute of a game. They were saying the Oilers had more of those goals than anybody, 6 of them, and McLeod alone has 3. So surely he leads the league in that department.
We always knew once McLeod started driving into the middle of the ice and used that blue paint that he'd start producing something.
Yeah, and he's scoring every which way, right? Like he's getting into the zone, he's getting into the blue paint, he's using his speed. This is not the Ryan McLeod that we saw the first 20 or so games of the season, that's for sure.
He had a throw a screen for him on the game winner last night.
That was a wicked shot, though.
A wicked shot, but what a good play all around, like CC blocking. It was at the same play where CC made the block and it goes up ice, right? What was so amazing to me is that Connor McDavid, like I said, Iggy, that's what it felt like last night, or Messier, that last little sequence where Morgan Riley's on his back, he takes a hit, he beats 2 guys off the puck with one hand on his stick. Then he punches Riley with his one hand. Then he punches Riley with his other hand. Then he gives him a little stick. Then he goes and throws a pick on Matthews. He moves, as I didn't notice until you said this, Bruce, and I went back and watched again. He perfectly moved out of the way, had a sixth sense to know exactly where McLeod had to shoot that puck and moved out of the way so that McLeod had that bullet to put in that gap in that lane and end it, right?
And Matthews leaned the other way. If you look at the replay closely, watch Matthews, and he's kind of leaning out of the way of the
Surprise!
Opening comes between the two of them, and Jones is hidden behind McDavid, and all McLeod had to do was let go of the puck at the right moment and hit that top corner space, and he did all. He was very patient there. I really liked McLeod's play there. He didn't just sort of jam it towards the net. He waited for the chance to truly develop, and then bang.
I love all the little tiny things we're doing right. It is I've always marveled Draisaitl's ability to knock an opponent's stick out of the way at the right time, or as he skates by him, kind of push a guy off balance or stick him in the nuts. You never know with Draisaitl, but ultimately, those little pick plays, and they were humming with those last night. It was a well-oiled machine. Like you could just see, like when Hyman and Nuge and even on that last shift, they were just, you could read and feed off of each other and know that cycle was going to be, you could just feel that goal coming. You could just feel it.
Yeah. And I mean, we're talking about McLeod and he's been a big part of that. And moving, like Knobloch has made very few lineup changes. But when he does, they just seem to work.
He's
right?
my fourth star last night.
Who's that? Knobloch?
Knobloch.
Yeah. Well, the one guy that should have got a star last night and didn't was Stuart Skinner.
Connor McDavid.
Well, and Connor McDavid. I mean, you know what? To be fair, there were a lot of guys you could have put on that 3 stars, and I'm not sure I would have put Matthews on there, but they did. I know he scored, a beauty, and he had his chances.
He had a decent 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, here's a factoid from you for last night, and this goes to Knobloch's deployment. You mentioned earlier about McDavid being -2 early in the game, and he wound up +1. And Nugent Hopkins was -2 at the beginning of the game, and he stayed -2 because all the goals were scored with different line mates. It was McDavid was out with Draisaitl, who scored the goal, and Kane made it 2-1. And then on the winning goal, it was McDavid with Draisaitl and McLeod. And then on the empty net goal, which of course they didn't have anything to do with really, was McDavid with Draisaitl and Hyman. So in each case, Draisaitl and McDavid played 2.5 minutes together, 5-on-5, and the Oilers scored twice. So last night that combination was lethal, and so but he kept sort of mixing and matching his lines a little bit down the stretch, and they delivered in key moments.
But Bruce, to your knowledge, has McLeod ever played with McDavid and Draisaitl before? Like, that's some kind of hunch.
Yeah. It would be rare. It would be a natural stat trick, but it would be single digits of minutes. I almost guarantee it.
Yeah.
Knobloch said after the game
centers, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
But what have I always said about McLeod, though? I've said he's a guy that can play up and down the lineup, like wherever.
Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
Nuge Jr., Nuge Light.
Yeah. I've always been a big fan. I mean, he had a slow start. Curious. Okay, so we've got Omer Ali on YouTube says, where does Holloway go when he comes back? Thought he would be the 3C, but that's McLeod's spot. That's actually, a good question. I mean, Holloway was skating the other day, was he not?
Yeah, he's playing games, and he's playing games in Bakersfield, and he's been good. He's played 3 games, has 3 points, and he's got like 5 or more shots on net, I think, in every game. Like, he's really been bringing it, Holloway. And he's
and maybe just a victim of the Oilers' success right now, right? I mean, there's no real spot to suit him.
Well, he was hurt. He needed, some rehab time, and he needed minutes. I mean, even when he was here, he was getting like 8, 9, 10 minutes a game. And then 6 weeks he didn't play at all, and then the team was hot. Where are you going to put him? Right, 4th line. You give him Hamlin's minutes. Well, aren't you better off giving him 15, 18, 20-minute games down the HL for a week or 2 weeks or a month even?
Knobloch's been pretty good at mixing guys in to try to get them hot, right? Like, he's done it with McLeod. He's going to try and do it with Kane here now. Omar said he thought that it would be the 3C, but that's McLeod's spot. I mean, with Holloway out of the lineup, that hasn't even been McLeod's spot. McLeod's been a winger on the second line for the majority of this past heater, and will probably either remain a winger, I would think, on the second and third line, and slot it into the 3 spot when he can. The resurgence of Hamlin has really helped with that, I think. I'm not sure Derek Ryan's a permanent 3C that we need to have there, but like you said, all of them have that little bit of utility to mix in and out. Holloway deserves to be a winger, I think. And I think Knobloch will find places to get him in when he can, just like he has with these other guys, and get him involved. I think that was one of Woody's downfalls. It was hard. Well, maybe not at the beginning of Woody, but at the end of Woody, right? He fell back to the tippet and the ways of the past where you go back to that nuclear option and nobody else gets involved because you also have the same power play unit out for 1:58 every time. So there's no way to get anyone involved when they're playing penalty kill in bottom 6 minutes. But Knobloch's seem to find a way to do that, and everybody's getting involved and everybody's picking up their pace as a result.
How big is it that the Oilers, like when you look at this defense, I mean, every defense is going to have a lapse once in a while, but we don't see the high danger chances that teams used to get, 3 or 4 times a period anymore. The way that they're playing defense, like, Darnell Nurse looks like worth every dollar, that's been spent on him. Last night there were a couple of miscues that were kind of lucky bounces for Toronto, but other than that, I mean, this defense has been great. I mean, Ekholm and Bouchard have been solid. I thought that playing a man-to-man D would be a killer for Bouchard all season. I said that. You could go back and see. I just didn't think he was going to be capable of it, but he seems to have taken it. What kind of changes you guys think that the Knobloch team have put in place, whether it's Paul Coffey or Stewart, that have really changed, how this defense is performing? And how does that, we talk about Stuart Skinner. I look at Skinner and think, I mean, last night he was outstanding. Like that save he made where Matthews had the bucket. Like in Matthews with that, like I don't know if you saw that, Dash, but that was a 93-kilometer-an-hour snapshot.
Oh, wow.
It
reminded me of Bedard's goal, to be honest, and I kind of thought like Skinner was going, not again.
Yeah, like that was a rocket, and Louis said that he's sitting beside Picard. Down below, and he's saying Picard's yelling, "What a save!" Because that was unreal. I mean, we're seeing a new side of Skinner, but at the same token, Skinner's not having to make those saves near as often as he was. I mean, what are you guys seeing that's different in this defense? Like, how are they? I mean, Knobloch's got them doing things that they weren't doing the first 20 games of the season.
Well, Bruce is the expert on that. These guys literally track it at the Cult of Hockey, so I'd be remiss to sit here and try to speak over him, that's for sure. But the eye test for me tells me that they're just keeping it more simple. Everybody's got a role. They're kind of just staying on their side of the ice. They're keeping it simple around the net. Nobody's trying to overextend. Desharnais probably had the biggest improvement, in my opinion. And I couldn't believe how many times last night he would hold off one guy with one hand. He did like 2 or 3 times where he held the guy off with one hand to protect the puck and passed it with the other hand with one hand.
Yeah, he's really using his size finally, like really, really using.
And that's used exactly, Michael. That's that stretch, that Chara-like reach was like, who can, when you're defending the puck with your body at 6'9", and then you're holding someone off with a 9-foot arm, and then you're using one hand on your stick to pass it up the boards, and it's a safe play. Like there's so many little moments like that were awesome, but. What do you see overall, Bruce? Like what systematically, why are they so much more comfortable now?
Well, I think the big thing is Coffey's installation of telling them to make plays. When you got the puck on your stick, don't just dump it off the glass and out, unless it's a real last resort. Hold it on your stick.
Strudwick.
Look for a teammate, and Steady Steve was particularly famous for off the glass and out, I think, but there's probably been a few of them over the years.
Yeah.
But he's sort of given the go ahead to, make even the odd one that makes you gasp where they fire a pass right in front of their own net, but if that's where the lane is and that's where the pass receiver has confidence in your ability to make the pass and then the other guy's ability to receive it and not bobble it. And so they're using the full width of the zone, it seems like, when they're trying to get out of it.
Well, and they're really backing each other up too,
Yeah.
right? Like when they do make the mistake, there are guys there to be that are on the puck. Just like their forecheck last night in the defensive zone, they're really good on the puck, I think.
Yeah, well, they've got, I think, Desharnais, who I thought was the most vulnerable defenseman when the coaching change was made. Because he was very much Woody's guy. Got developed in the minors, and when Woody took over the team, uh, coaches go with what they know. Well, what Woody knew was some of these minor leaguers that came up, and this is why he gave a lot of rope to some of these younger players that had come up through the system. And maybe that's what people were thinking was lacking this year, that he was going more and more with the vets. Well, you know, but DeHarnay, I thought he might be very vulnerable to even losing his job if the new coaches come in and let's see, big, awkward looking, kind of clumsy, not much offense. You know, doesn't really pound people with big hits. He just kind of takes them out, right? But you watch him long enough and you realize he takes them out a lot and takes them right out of the play. And then gets himself on the right side where the puck is and then chips it along to the next person. And so that's really nice to see on the third pairing, but we're seeing evidence, you know, throughout the lineup, and I think Nurse's game has really come up in leaps and bounds, and that may just be Coffee, you know, getting into their headspace and
Well, Nurse looks like a
confidence.
leader out there.
Yeah,
right?
well,
Yeah, which was always the intention, right? Was that, and the thing that I noticed first about Nurse, not only does he make the plays, because he's never shied away from making a play, right? But he's making smarter decisions, right? Like he would chase the puck, you know, all over the ice in the past. Reminded me of like when once in a while you'd watch Puljujarvi go back and forth everywhere, chasing the puck around and just having a good old time. Well, Nurse was that sort of variation on defense, and you'd get burnt once in a while. And when you're playing the amount of minutes he has, you can't be chasing the puck like that. But I've noticed since Knobloch's been in this, you know, Coffee and Stewart and the team, like there's been a couple times where Nurses stopped up and made the realization that this is not the play I need to make right now, right? And trust the rest of the team to do what they need to do. I mean, it helps when you got a forecheck like we had last night. There's no doubt there. Yeah.
That defense utilization was amazing last night, though, because you could tell right away that Bouchard was on the ice for both of those goals. He was probably at fault for the first one. Again, I would default to Bruce on that, but he fell asleep to me. Yeah. There's probably one guy highlighted, you know, on the dressing room chalkboard that you should keep an eye on, and Matthews might be that guy, and he kind of left him there. So I thought Knobloch moving that because he really likes to play the five-man units, right? Like Bouchard is almost always out there with McDavid. Yeah. And, you know, I kept hearing on radio today, that, you know, when they pulled McDavid away from Matthews, I think they pulled Matthews away from Bouchard, or Bouchard away from Matthews. And they just kept throwing CC over the boards, and Nurse. I felt like CC was out there for 35 minutes last night. I didn't ever check the box score, but
he led the team in ice time, which doesn't
really
at all.
Yeah, like in every time
minutes and 58 seconds, he blocked 5 shots. He got an assist. He was involved in the last 2 Oilers goals, and he was not counting the empty netter, but the tying and winning goals. And he had a very strong game, I thought.
Well, and he was right up there with what could have been a high danger chance that ended up not going anywhere, but he was in the play. Like I actually thought he might score at one point last night.
On the tying goal, where McLeod made the centering pass out and Ryan wrapped it in. CC, first of all, he made 2 shot blocks. That was why Edmonton had the puck in the first place. Right. But then he comes up in the zone when McLeod's got it behind the net. He drops into the decoy. Right circle. He taps the ice with his stick. Matthew Nyes goes to CC and not to Ryan, and that's why Ryan was open, was because Nyes had to cover 2 guys, and he picked the other guy. And Ryan picked the guy that Nyes put it right on his stick, and it was a nice play. And they basically, it was CC flooding the zone was a big part of that play. Yeah. Now, if I'm the defender, I think CC's the guy I'm not going to cover because he hasn't scored in a century. Yeah. Whatever. I mean, he's
him and Brown.
He was an offensive player in junior, and he still thinks like one. Every once in a while, he shows up in surprising places.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah,
the guy
that's
that
not
said Connor Brown should get a Selkie for how well he shut down Draisaitl this year.
Bruce, we got a little less than 10 minutes left, and you brought up something, which is Holloway playing in Bakersfield. I know you watch the Condors. Do you want to give us just a little bit of a report of what's going on in Bakersfield that maybe Oilers fans might be interested in hearing about?
Sure. I don't watch the Condors as much as some people do, and I recommend the excellent Bruce Curlock at
Bruce
Oilers
Curlock.
Nation, who's done terrific video work and regular posts on that. And we do our a lot of our prospect coverage in the summer, but I do have the AHL TV, and I tune into the odd game here and there. And I made a point of watching Holloway's first game just to see how he handled the center position, because we've only really seen him as a wing. And he did have a very, very good first game, and he played a strong positional game. And then the next night they played when the Oilers were playing, so I didn't see that one. And I'm not much for watching them after they're over. And Colin Chalk on Oilers Now said that Holloway's second game was not as strong as his first one, but he still had like a few shots. He had an assist. And I think now he's played 3 games. He's got a goal and 2 assists. And he looks like, an NHLer among AHLers.
Yeah.
And it kind of stands out. It reminds me, remember way back in 04-05, the lockout season, and we had the Edmonton Roadrunners come up and play AHL hockey.
Yeah, I went to those games. I had season tickets.
Oh, did you? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I went to a few of those games. I particularly made a point of going to a game between Edmonton Roadrunners and St. John's Maple Leafs, because that's my hometown, St. John's, Newfoundland. And in my early years, I was a Maple Leafs fan because the Oilers didn't exist yet. So I had to go see that game. And I remember just coming out of that game and saying, you can just see it. Jarrett Stahl, Matt Stajan, these guys are NHL players. They're playing in an AHL setting, but they're just on the rise. And the third guy that I picked out who wasn't as known as those guys was Kyle Brodziak from that game.
Yeah.
That guy just looks like he's so comfortable, like he knows the game, he understands the game. And Holloway is, he's standing out, he's standing out more even for his athleticism, which I don't think any of those guys had to his degree. And Philip Broberg, same way. Man, he makes a lot of things look easy at that level. He's such a fine skater, and what they call 4-way skating, and he's just really good at eliminating stuff before it even happens, because he just gets to the puck first, or he just takes the guy out of the play. And he's not, I wish he was a little more aggressive, but he's got some real nice underlying skills. And I'm not unhappy to see 2 players of this caliber, eating up minutes, all the minutes they can handle at the AHL level, rather than being, press box or marginal minutes on the roster, not playing in any high leverage situations. And I think it's very likely, well, we'll see Holloway, I think for sure, but very likely we'll see both guys before the playoffs. And for Broberg, I mean, he's literally one injury away from being in the lineup. I think they want him playing and ready to go, as opposed to being the 7th. There's just no purpose in it.
It is good. There's some depth in the system, right? That if, I mean, obviously if a guy like McDavid or Draisaitl go down, then, you're not going to replace them as easy, but you still got guys like the Drake is sitting there in Bakersfield, right? Who can play limited minutes in Edmonton if you ever needed him to. We still got Gagne, who's, obviously injured and out, and Broberg and those
That
guys.
whole top line in Bakersfield.
Even Phil
Raphael
Kemp,
Lavoie.
right? Yeah. Lavoie. I mean, it's nice, right? Like the team
Shane Peterson.
isn't doing that well, obviously. But how's have you watched any Campbell games since? I mean, we haven't really talked much about him. Is he, how's he looking?
The night I watched him, he was good.
Yeah.
But I've seen highlights from other nights where he wasn't good at all, and but he's posted relatively solid numbers. he had sort of 3 tough games right away. They stuck him right in the net. This was a mistake when they sent him down. They put him right in the net, and they started giving him every game. And Rodrigue was sitting gathering cobwebs on the bench. Campbell, I think he needed a break from it.
Mhm.
And I noticed when Toronto sent Samsonov down, the first thing they said was, he isn't going to be playing any games for a while. We just want him, working with a head coach, and getting his head back together while he's working on his game off the ice. And I think that was probably a mistake by Edmonton to try and force feed Campbell into that. But lately they've been going way more with Waugh, which is fine by me because he's the better goalie with the more promising future at this point in time. But also it does give Campbell that chance to maybe reset, and he's starting to deliver decent games. And last weekend, for instance, they won both games 3-2. And I think Rodrigue made 36 stops on Friday night, and then Campbell made 34 on Saturday. And, we got strong games from both and winning effort. And then last night they lost 2-1. They're hardly giving up any goals. And the issue is more, can they score enough to win games?
I don't think Campbell's played. I think I read somewhere that he's only played 1 game this calendar year. So
yeah, he played last Saturday night when
34 saves
and
hadn't played since December before that. So,
well, it's clearly a mental thing for Campbell, right? I would be interesting to see how he would have performed if the Oilers were playing at the nature they're playing now. It's just unfortunate. It is what it is. He's where he's at, and just like any player in the league, they've got to earn their way back in the lineup. All right, guys, we're running down. I want to say a couple things before we go because we got about 2 minutes left. Heavy Hockey Showdown is coming to Edmonton February 25th. Is the hockey game. February 24th is our pre-party. We're sitting at around, I'd say, with sponsors, everything about $6,500 raised right now, with a long ways to go. I expect us to get in that $20,000 mark, which will absolutely shatter our amount from last year. And then alongside, we're doing that with the Oilers Girls Night. There's going to be a 50-50 running in between the two of them. Combined last year, we did about 25,000 in donations to SACE, a good portion of that from the Heavy Hockey Showdown. This year, I expect to smash that. It should be bigger and better. Of course, thanks to Edmonton Sports Talk for helping us out on that. There are still 4 spots available for anybody who wants to register.
And a coaching spot, Bruce.
And a coaching spot, yeah. We could use a numbers guy out there as well if you if you know anybody. Of course, we've got the hockey game itself is going to be a ton of fun. It's 3 hours at Downtown Community Center with the clearing and midway. We're going to do 3 mini games, actually 2 mini games, and if there's a clear winner, then we won't do the third, which will be scheduled to be a full-on overtime game if needed. So that's going to be fun. Dustin Nielsen will be playing. Tom Gazzola will be playing. Of course, Dash will be playing, and some of the other Heavy Hockey Network crew. Bruce, you ever play any net? You want to get in there?
Well, I did when I was a youngster, but that was quite a number of years ago.
All right. Well, we could get you some equipment if you need to, or just to sit on the sidelines.
In St. John's, my coach's name was Howie Meeker.
Really? Like the Howie Meeker?
He was the face of hockey in Newfoundland.
Wow.
And
wow.
He was a coach at many, many levels. From
I keep thinking there's no more we could learn about you.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I just thought that too. It's like, what else can we learn about Bruce?
We're off the air on Edmonton Sports Talk, so we're not bound by any more timeline, but we're going to wrap it up anyway. That's I can't believe that. That's awesome, Bruce. Howie Meeker coached you. That's really super.
But can you pace our pine and yell pucks deep every couple of minutes?
That's right. We might need you as an e-bug. Who
he
knows?
Was actually a terrible goalie coach. He just said he used to split the ice in half. And he would train the skaters down on half the skaters at one end, and there'd be a mini game at the other end. And he just had me play both mini games. He said, you just need action in games to So I never got
Slow
to do
it
any of
down
the
right there, Bruce.
any of the pylon drills or any of that stuff. But I was technically in Howie's charge for that hour a week or whatever the hell it was. There was
Very
so little indoor ice there that there was and outdoor ice just is not viable in that climate.
Subtle
So,
name
Oh,
drop.
geez.
Jeepers.
Bruce, we are overtime, obviously, and I want to thank you for that. We're going to close up. It just occurred to me, we're here. We're with a great Edmonton media guy, but we lost two great Edmonton media guys just recently. You probably knew them as well as anybody did. We always give our guests the last word. I would love if you dedicated tonight's last word to just a couple words about. Let me tell you just a quick story. My dad's passed away now, probably about 14, 15 years. And absolutely great father to me, but he was a drunk and sort of a wild guy. But he would call into John Short all the time, and John Short's screener would never stop my dad from going on, even despite the fact that he was the guy that you knew John would have hated to talk to. But John always, treated him really well on the air, and I loved listening to John Short post game as a kid, and he is as much the Oilers as anybody. Absolutely amazing. But Bruce, I'd love if you could just give a couple words about John and Robin, and we'll close it off with that. Thanks to everybody. Make sure if you don't know the information about the Heavy Hockey Showdown, reach out to me at Oilerslive on X, and with that, I'll unless Dash, you got anything to say, we'll pass it off to Bruce for the last word.
Well, I'm just gonna maybe I missed it. Ask you to remind of the date of the heavy hockey.
Oh yeah, it's February. It's February 24th and 25th. The 24th is actually a Battle of Alberta game, so we're going to get together before the Battle of Alberta game at Soho for the pre-party. Some of us are going to leave and go to the game after the fact, and then the next day in the morning, 11 o'clock, I believe, is the start time. We're going to hit the ice. Two teams, Edmonton Sports Talk versus Heavy Hockey. I should say also, I'm great at these last words because I always talk a lot. But Turtle Island Technology Solutions is a major sponsor. Flirt Cupcakes and the niceagents.ca are three corporate sponsors that we've had on board this year that are great. So check them out if you can and do that. But thanks for asking that. That's important. Yeah. And when you're done, Bruce, just like we do with every last word, give us a good night, and I'll know to shut the lights off before we go.
All right. Well, Robin Brownlee, I didn't know well. I mean, I'm a blogger. I'm an outsider, but I ran into him a few times at Oil Kings games or equivalent. We had a nice cordial relationship, good relationship on Twitter. I mean, every once in a while he'd come in and be the Twitter police, and he was kind of famous for that, for grammatical errors or factual stuff, making sure everybody was toeing the line in terms of what was right. And I respect that of him, even though it could be a little annoying at times. But he was a friendly guy, and I understand he was a great dad. And his life changed when his boy was born, and his boy is still only 17. Lost his dad. And so how old was I when I lost my dad? 52, and it was still brutal. So as for John Short, I mean, anybody who lived in Edmonton in the 80s especially was a sports fan, and I mean, there was a lot of big time heavy sports. Can you imagine if Twitter had existed in the 1980s, or social media in general? But our sort of common link was to listen to John's show, and to people that phoned in. I phoned in myself a few times. I was even graciously invited and hosted by John as a studio guest in the mid-1980s on a particular subject that I'd written to the NHL about. and he took interest in it, and he, encouraged me. So I got my first sort of radio appearance, if that's even the right word for what you do on the radio, thanks to Mr. John Short. And I've heard so many other people, from Jason Greger to Ryan Shaw and on in this last week, talk about their beginnings in the industry and how John Short was, that sort of the standard in the industry, but how he helped many people. And what they said about him that rang true to me was that he was not a micromanager. So he would give them a job. Steve Lansky, he was another one on Low Tide show the other day, and he said he was a 17-year-old kid who got invited by Glenn Sather to be the statistician, and John Short gave him his entry interview. And he said that once he was there, John said, "You go and do what you're going to do, and I'll leave you the space to do it." And it worked well for both of them. And Gregor said the same thing. He says, "I'm not good at being micromanaged," and John was very good at not micromanaging, so we got along great. And anyway, he was a real gentleman, and I never once heard him hang up on a caller. I sort of, he would end the call, but he would do it in a polite way. And answer the last question, or give the caller the last word, or take it himself as appropriate. But he never, Brian Hall, for instance, he used to just slam down, or equivalent to slamming down the phone on somebody he didn't agree with. John would just say, "Everybody's got a democratic right to be wrong." And he'd say it 2-3 times a night. And that was his way of saying, "Buddy, you're dead wrong." But he wouldn't ever say it in those words. He'd say, "Everybody has a democratic right to be wrong." And so he was a real gentleman, and multimedia. He was a writer, sports writer for the Edmonton Journal. He was and Sun, I believe. He was certainly on the radio. He was the Oilers. What's the word for the PR guy for the Oilers? He used to write articles for the program. I have a wonderful article in a program dated January 18th, 1979, that Wayne Gretzky turned 18 years old and signed a 21-year contract at center ice. Well, John wrote the main article for the program that night, and it was a wonderful take. You look back at it years later and say, man, he had Wayne Gretzky to a T, and he was turning 18 years old. So anyways, both those guys will be missed. Of the two, Robin's passing is, certainly the more tragic, so sudden. Whereas John, at the age that he was, and people knew that he was ill and, getting in poor health, it's certainly sad, but it's not, wasn't a surprise. And he got full innings in his life, 86, almost 87 years. And Robin was, cut short. And that's that. But to get both of those on the same day, these two sort of upstanding voices in Edmonton media for decades, and they were both gone like within, seemed like minutes. And it was just brutal to get it all one day. So rest in peace, John and Robin.